Welcome, my friends and history fans, for part 31 of 5,000 Years of War, where we've reached the First Greco-Persian War. First, a zoom on the army of Sparta, as it will play a major role in later parts of these conflicts. Sparta, or Lacedaemonia, has had the best land army of ancient Greece, acquiring a veritable hegemony for several decades at some point. We'll see that in a few videos. Those that were called the Spartans, the homoi, meaning equals, were the elite citizens forming the core of the army, and it was not before late in the 5th century BC that their numbers diminishing, they started being largely accompanied by perikoi, free men of Lacedaemonia, and helots, slaves, in combat. The homoi were inspected at birth, for they needed to be perfect, and as soon as 7 years old, they were cruelly toughened through the agoge, a training in which deprivations and corporal punishment were ordinary. They were later, at 14, trained to fight as a compact formation of warriors, the famous phalanx. Helot slaves were regularly hunted and assassinated to maintain fighting abilities among the Spartans and to keep these in fear and submission also. Sparta's army was under the authority of its two kings. Each had a guard of 100 logads, chosen among the best of the equals, or Spartans, and they directly commanded to 6 polemarchs, each of these leading a mora, 600 men of the army. The orders of the polemarchs were distributed by symphories, messengers, to the lokagos, some said hipparchs, leaders of lokoi. There were 2 lokoi in each mora. Each lokos was then divided into 8 pentecostiae, leader pentecostier, each again split into 2 enomotiae, the basic unit of Lacedemonia's army, 30 Spartans that lived together in times of peace and deployed in 1 to 3 ranks when marching against the enemy. After the Greco-Persian Wars, units that had previously only been composed of Spartans started including perikoi and sometimes even helots. On the battlefield, kings and polemarchs generally try to make 2 moras operate together. The king is usually accompanied by 300 hippeis, elite Spartans, possibly among them the logads, and their name could indicate that once the elite of Sparta would have been mounted before the advent of the phalanx when the battle formations were looser. The homoi, or equals, being hoplites exclusively, like this one here on the crater of Vix. The use of allied detachments was a necessity if any cavalry or light infantry support was to be had. This army structure would change during the 3rd century before our era due to tactics evolution and the constant decrease in Spartan roster. The army would still count 6 moras, but 24 lokoi instead of 12, 48 pentecostiae, 96 enomotiae. That was the army of Sparta, the hoplite army by excellence in Greece. And they did not fight naked torso like in the movie 300, of course, alright? We can resume the course of time now. And we are at 499 BC, when one Aristagoras, tyrant of Miletus on the western coast of Anatolia, attempts an expedition against the island of Naxos that just submitted its longtime rival during the previous century, Paros, which was also a rival of Miletus. In its assault against Naxos in the Cyclades, Aristagoras is backed by Persian satrap Artaphernes, for the Persian Empire is sovereign over the Greek cities of western Anatolia, remember. Artaphernes has lent 200 triremes, commanded by Megabades, to Aristagoras to take Naxos after a revolt that had ousted the aristocrats of the island. But after 4 months of siege, Aristagoras, still struggling, has a severe disagreement with Artaphernes or his admiral. Crossed with them, fearing a severe punishment for his failure and his dispute, Aristagoras decides to fuel a full-scale Ionian revolt. against the Persian rule to protect himself from mighty Persian king Darius I's wrath. He also calls for continental Greece's help, and Athens soon sends help, 20 ships. Eritrea, not far from Athens, 5. A few thousand men strong, the revolted and their allied first score several successes, seizing some Persian and Phoenician ships in the process. The Greco-Persian wars have started. And around the same time, or towards 496 BC, Rome's dictator Aulus Postumius, helped by the master of cavalry Titus Aebutius, defeat through a bloody battle their Latin enemies, led by none other than Tarquin the Proud, the Etruscan near Rome, and Lake Regillus in the valley of Poikile. The battle started between the phalanxes of both sides before the Roman cavalry charged in, but to fight dismounted actually. The Romans, victorious, impose on the vanquished to be integrated into their Latin League, with of course a dominant position. The following year, 498, the revolted Ionians and their Athenian allies, after defeating a Phoenician fleet next to the coasts of Pamphylia in the south, burn Sardis, capital of the satrapy of Lydia. They, however, suffer a setback at Ephesus on the western coast during the spring against satrap Artaphernes, as Miletus, city of Aristagoras himself, is already besieged by other Persian forces. Then, during the summer, the Athenians go back home, even as new sparks of insurrection start against the Persians. Caria, Cyprus, where Nesilos of Salamis, brother of King Gorgos, overthrows him and takes the head of the insurgents, the banks of the Propontid, that is the Sea of Marmara, the Hellespont, and even Byzantium. In 497, things got really serious as Darius I, the Achaemenid king himself, has assembled his fleet and formed 3 separate armies to go and tame this large insurrection. At Cyprus, a 5-month siege is necessary to take Solace on the northeastern coast, and an assault ramp and a mine are made for the assault on Paphos on the southwestern coast. In 496, the Carians suffer a second defeat at Labranda, Carian city, so in southwestern Anatolia, during the summer. They then managed to score a victory during the autumn at Petassos in Troad, northwestern Anatolia, the eastern part of the Hellespont. It is their last success. While this time, brave Aristagoras has already fled and he's killed by Edons of Chalcidice as he tries to take refuge at the 9 Ways, the future Amphipolis. The Edons are Thracians, and Thracians around these times start using the kind of spear sword rhomphaia with a very long haft and a one-edged, slightly curved blade. And also here is a peltast light warrior, typical of Thrace too. A short break in India before seeing the end of the Ionian revolt. Vatsa and Avanti, ancient allies, are at war. Shanda of Avanti, first of the Pradiota dynasty, has recently attacked the capital of the Vatsa, Kausambi, but has been repulsed by King Satanika. Satanika dies of dysentery, and Chandra Pradiota, of course, comes back for another assault. He captures the son of the deceased king, Udayana. Sometime after, Shanda, maybe because his wife is sister to the queen of Vatsa, will let Udayana take the throne of his late father, but of course keeping the upper hand in this new alliance. Later still, Avanti will fall, like Kosala, to the grand Magadha of the east in the Ganges Valley. Know that an Indian legend tells that during his attack against Vatsa, Chanda Pradiota would have had a great mobile wooden elephant built, animated from the inside by his soldiers, to lure and capture Udayana, king of Vatsa and fond of elephants. This very hypothetical stratagem would then have worked. Back to more certain business with the end of the Ionian revolt. In 494 BC, the Carians, towards the start of the year, submit again to Darius I, the Achaemenid Persian. And during the summer, the great king scores an important naval victory near the island of Lade, over here, with apparently 600 ships against 300 for the revolted. Among the Greek insurgents, a third of the units would have come from Chios, this island right here, and for the Persian side, most of the galleys were Phoenicians, Cypriots, and Egyptians. Part of the Ionian ships defected during the battle, making the Persian victory obvious. This is the end of the Ionian revolt. Miletus, city from which the insurgency had started, neighbor to Lade, is sacked like Ephesus, and the Persian taming extends to Chios and even Lesbos, this grand island, with its major city of Mytilene. Darius' wrath possibly runs until the following year. To close this one, we'll note a crushing defeat of Argos here against Sparta over there. Argos, last serious competitor for Lacedaemonia in Peloponnese, sees King Cleomenes I of Sparta land at Sepeia near Tiryns and Noplia, southeast of Argos. So the Argives send their hoplites to repulse this invasion, but are defeated, and some are even burned in the sacred wood where they take refuge. Up to 6,000 warriors of the vanquished could have died. Argos itself doesn't fall, as Cleomenes I cannot hope to beat its strong walls defended by all capable Argive, even their women. But, strong of its Peloponnesian League, Sparta now dominates the entire region. The same year, we see an important victory in China of the Wu of King Fushai over the neighbor Yue, that they make their vassals for a time. The two southeastern states will keep on fighting one another for almost 80 years. They that are seen by the states of the central plain as almost barbarians, like the Jin, the Qin, or Shu. Well, I guess if you're not from the central plain, you're a barbarian anyway. For China, this century is the one of the passage from the Bronze to the Iron Age, the Wu spreading it widely after retaking it from its founders, somewhere southward it seems. Sword and shield becomes a more common combination among the infantry, which still sees more and more numerous troops being fielded in this ending spring and autumn period. And let's leap to 492 BC. A Persian fleet carrying dozens of thousands of men, commanded by Mardonius, is sent during the spring by his father-in-law Darius I, Achaemenid king of kings, towards Greece. This is it. The island of Tassos, the city of Abdera, northeast of it, the bridges of the Balkans, all are submitted, and the domination over the Macedonians of King Alexander I now is reaffirmed. Alexander, who just added Pieria and Bottiaea to its rule and moved his capital from Aigai to Pella, renews the submission offered by his father Amyntas I. In all this, only the Thracians resist the Persians, before a violent storm sinks up to 300 Persian galleys off Mount Athos in Kasdais, forcing Mardonius to cancel this expedition. It was probably here that for the first time the armored Cataphractos riders, who have their origin in the Scythians, nomads of the steppes, are seen riding in Europe for the first time in the Persian army. Of course, the Persians will very quickly be back. In the meantime, in 491, the Volsci, mountainous people established south of Latium and occasionally hostile to Rome, they start incursions on its territory. The Romans send an army under Caius Marcius. If he really existed, there is no consensus. The Romans prevail and take Corioli, capital of the Volsci. Congratulations! Elsewhere, the tyrant of Gela, Hippocrates, dies fighting the Shekelish in southern Sicily. One Gelon succeeds to him. And also failure of an expedition from Cleomenes I of Sparta against Aegina, island of the Saronic Gulf, which just submitted to the Persians. The Spartan king can take it away from this new allegiance, and the confrontation, if it really came to arms, is hard to grasp. Are you ready now? This is the year of Marathon, 490 BC. Persian ships make ravages during the summer, notably at Paros and Naxos, Cyclades islands that had taken part in the Ionian revolt. Then, in Euboea, this large island, Charistos and Eretria are hit too, this one besieged during 6 days, 4,000 Athenian hoplites sent for help, finally turning tail, seeing the might of the invaders. Indeed, Darius I has sent 600 ships, mostly triremes and commanded by satrap Datis, a Mede, and this mighty armada carries 20,000 soldiers at least, under satrap Artaphernes. The inhabitants of vanquished places are deported towards Mesopotamia, but those that did not resist at all, like in Delos Island, are left to their usual business as new Persian subjects. And here are the ruins of Rhamnus, an Athenian fort built not far from that city by the Athenians to better control their nearby region. It is not far from Marathon, mind you. Marathon, where the mighty Achaemenid lands in September, or a few kilometers from it, on the eastern coast of the Attic. The objective is Athens, southwest, which helped the Ionian rebels a few years ago. But for a full week, the Persians apparently only do some incursions, the bulk of their force remaining close to their fleet, maybe waiting for the Greek army. The exact location of the Persian fleet and camp are uncertain. And indeed, about 10,000 Athenians, led by strategos Miltiades, reinforced by 800 Plataeans from Boeotia, come to meet the invaders. Most of the Greek army is of course made of hoplites, backed by some light Gymnades slaves. 2,000 Lacedaemonians, or Spartans, will arrive late for this battle, which is the first large encounter of the Greco-Persian wars. The Persians, they are back to the sea, are commanded by satraps, Datis, and Artaphernes, and these are counseled by Hippias, former tyrant of Athens. Miltiades, the Greek commander, disposes some stake walls on the sides of the battlefield at uncertain locations to hinder the movements of the Persian cavalry. Note that the Greek army in blue here is actually commanded by 10 different strategos from Athens, who take their turn daily at the supreme command. He spears hesitating. When his turn comes, Miltiades convinces Callimachus, the leader of the phalanxes, to launch the attack. Shrugging off the arrows of the Persian archers, the mass of hoplites charges in. It seems that the Persians somehow managed to hold off the heavy infantry advance in the center at first, but then hoplites from the flanks outflank their opponents, and the rest is nothing less than a Persian debacle. The Persians run back to their ships, but lots of them are smitten in their rout. The Greeks lose only about 200 of their numbers against 6,500 Persians, killed, it seems. Unfortunately, Callimachus, at the right wing of the army, the place of honor, is killed. After Marathon, the Persian fleet only tries some raid against Athens harbor, Phaleria, but quickly sails away. Hippias, the turncoat counseling the satraps, is killed at Lemnos, Aegean island, before the end of the year. Here you have kind of an idea of what close combat could resemble between hoplites and Persians once the doru, the spear of the hoplite, had been dropped. But note that this is from slightly after the Battle of Marathon, so instead of a heavy cuirass, it is a lighter linothorax that this fighter is carrying. And see also this beautiful reproduction of the Stoa Poikile painting in Athens depicting the Battle of Marathon, while hearing how Herodotus, ancient Greek historian, described the charge of the hoplites. At Marathon, they thought that a destructive madness had contaminated the Greek ranks when they saw them charging ensconced in their heavy armors. And when the Greek hoplites hit their lines, the Persians understood that these men didn't only honor Apollo, but also the savage and irrational Dionysos. Note that on this representation, the upper part is just about gods and goddesses. The lower part only is the actual battle, and you can see the names of some of the commanders in the battle, like satrap deities and phalanx leader Callimachus, for example, that was killed during the battle. That's all for this first part of the Greco-Persian Wars. Next week, they will reach a new high with the battles of Cape Artemisium, Salamis, and of course Leonidas and his 300 Spartans defending the Thermopylae to their death. Thanks for your fidelity. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to help the channel grow. Have a great day, friends.